Lieutenant Marcus Chen had always believed in following orders without question, but standing in the sterile white corridors of the Galactic Tribunal station, watching the procession of alien prisoners being led to their executions, something inside him began to crack. The war between the Terran Alliance and the Zephyrian Empire had raged for 3 years, and Marcus had seen enough death to last several lifetimes. Yet nothing had prepared him for what he was about to witness. The prisoner transport bay hummed with the low vibration of the station's artificial gravity generators. Marcus adjusted his tactical vest, the weight of his plasma rifle familiar against his shoulder. As a member of the Terran military police, his job was simple: ensure the condemned prisoners reached their execution chambers without incident. The brass had made it clear that these weren't just any prisoners. They were war criminals, responsible for the massacre at Colony 7, where 15,000 human civilians had died. The heavy blast doors hissed open, and the first group of Zephyrian prisoners shuffled through in electromagnetic shackles. Marcus had seen Zephyrians before, but always through the scope of his rifle or in the chaos of battle. Up close, they were surprisingly humanoid, though their skin held a subtle blue-green tint, and their eyes were larger than human proportions would suggest. What struck him most was how young some of them looked. "Keep it moving," barked Sergeant Williams, Marcus's superior officer. Williams was a career military man who had lost his brother in the Colony 7 attack. His hatred for the Zephyrians ran deep, and he made no effort to hide it. "These monsters don't deserve our sympathy." Marcus nodded, though something felt wrong. The prisoners moved with a resigned dignity that didn't match the savage killers he'd been told they were. Among them, one figure caught his attention, a female Zephyrian who walked with her head held high despite the shackles that bound her hands and feet. She was taller than the others, with intricate tattoos covering her arms that seemed to shift and move in the artificial light. Her eyes, a deep violet color, met his briefly, and Marcus felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, though he was certain they'd never met. The procession continued down the corridor toward the execution chambers. Marcus had been told the process would be quick and humane, a neural disruptor that would shut down brain function instantly. The Alliance claimed it was more merciful than the Zephyrians deserved, given their crimes. But as Marcus watched the female warrior's steady gait, he found himself questioning everything he'd been told about this war. "Chen," Williams called out, "you're assigned to Chamber 7. Make sure the Zephyrian designated as Prisoner 4477 makes it to the platform without any heroics." Marcus checked his tablet. Prisoner 4477 was the female warrior who had caught his attention. According to her file, her name was Kira Valdris, a former commander in the Zephyrian Defense Corps. The charges against her were extensive: mass murder, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Yet as Marcus read through the details, inconsistencies began to emerge. The timeline didn't match up, and several witness testimonies contradicted each other. The execution chamber was a stark, clinical space with white walls and a single platform in the center where the condemned would kneel for their final moments. Marcus positioned himself near the entrance as technicians ran final checks on the neural disruptor. The device looked deceptively simple: a cylindrical apparatus that would emit a focused electromagnetic pulse, shutting down the victim's nervous system in a fraction of a second. Kira Valdris was led into the chamber by two guards. She moved with the fluid grace of a trained warrior, even in shackles. As she passed Marcus, she spoke in perfect English, her voice low and controlled. "You have kind eyes, human. I hope you will remember what you see here today." Marcus felt his breath catch. Before he could respond, the guards pushed Kira toward the platform. She knelt without resistance, her violet eyes scanning the room with an alertness that suggested she was looking for something or someone. "Any last words?" asked Captain Morrison, the officer overseeing the execution. He stood behind a protective barrier, his hand hovering over the activation switch. Kira raised her head. "I die knowing the truth will eventually come to light. The real war criminals wear your uniforms." Morrison's face darkened. Typical Zephyrian lies: activate the disruptor. But as Morrison reached for the switch, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the chamber in an ominous glow, and the intercom crackled to life. "All personnel to battle stations. We have multiple Zephyrian vessels approaching. This is not a drill." The execution chamber erupted in controlled chaos as guards received new orders through their comm units. Marcus watched as Morrison hesitated, his hand still hovering over the disruptor controls. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, "we're being ordered to evacuate all non-essential personnel to the lower decks." Morrison cursed under his breath. "Stand down the execution. We'll deal with this prisoner after we repel the attack." As the guards moved to escort Kira back to the holding cells, Marcus made a decision that would change his life forever. During the confusion of the evacuation, he had accessed the station's classified database using his military credentials. What he found there made his blood run cold. The real files on Kira Valdris told a different story. She wasn't a war criminal. She was a peace negotiator who had been captured while trying to arrange a ceasefire. The massacre at Colony 7 hadn't been ordered by the Zephyrian High Command. It had been the work of a rogue faction that Kira herself had been trying to stop. The evidence was all there, buried in classified reports that painted her as a hero rather than a villain. More disturbing was what Marcus discovered about the other prisoners. Many of them were civilians, captured during raids on Zephyrian settlements. Some were scientists and doctors who had been working on humanitarian projects. The Terran Alliance had been systematically executing non-combatants while claiming they were eliminating war criminals. The attacking Zephyrian fleet wasn't mounting an offensive. They were attempting a rescue mission to save their people from illegal execution. Marcus realized he was witnessing a war crime being committed by his own government, and every instinct he had as a soldier and a human being told him he couldn't let it continue. As the station shook under the impact of the first wave of the attack, Marcus found himself alone in the corridor outside the holding cells. The other guards had been reassigned to defensive positions, leaving the prisoners temporarily unguarded. He could hear the sound of his own heartbeat as he approached the cell where Kira was being held. She looked up as he entered, her expression shifting from resignation to curiosity. "The kind-eyed human returns. Have you come to gloat before the final moment?" Marcus deactivated the electromagnetic locks on her shackles. "I've come to get you out of here." Kira's eyes widened in shock as the shackles fell away from her wrists and ankles. She rubbed the circulation back into her hands, her gaze never leaving Marcus's face. "This is either the most elaborate torture technique your people have devised, or you've discovered something that's changed your perspective on this war." "I found your real files," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper as another explosion rocked the station. "You're not a war criminal, you're a peace negotiator. Colony 7 wasn't your doing, you were trying to prevent it." Kira stood slowly, testing her legs after hours in restraints. "So the truth finally surfaces. I wondered how long it would take for someone in your military to access the classified records." She studied Marcus intently. "But why are you helping me? You could be executed for treason." Marcus had been asking himself the same question. 3 hours ago, he would have followed orders without hesitation. Now, everything he thought he knew about the war had been turned upside down. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I've seen enough innocent people die." The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the small viewport in the cell, they could see the lights of Zephyrian fighters darting between the massive defense turrets. The rescue fleet had arrived in force, but they were heavily outgunned by the station's defenses. "We need to move," Marcus said, checking his rifle's charge. "The holding bay has emergency escape pods, if we can reach them." "Wait," Kira placed a hand on his arm. "What about the other prisoners? I won't abandon them." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had been so focused on saving Kira that he hadn't considered the dozens of other innocent Zephyrians awaiting execution. There are too many of them. We'll never be able to free them all without being detected. "Then we make detection work for us," Kira said, her tactical mind already formulating a plan. "Your people respond to threats, correct? If we can create enough chaos, force them to redistribute their security forces, we might be able to create an opening." Before Marcus could object, Kira had moved to the cell's control panel. Her fingers danced over the interface with surprising skill, and within moments, she had accessed the station's internal systems. "How did you?" Marcus began. "I've been studying your technology for months while in captivity," Kira explained, her concentration focused on the screen. "Your security protocols are extensive but predictable. There, I've accessed the environmental controls for this entire sector." The lights in the corridor began to flicker, and Marcus could hear the ventilation system cycling through different modes. Emergency klaxons added to the cacophony of alarms already echoing through the station. "What are you doing?" Marcus demanded. "Creating a distraction. In 30 seconds, the atmospheric processors for this section will register a catastrophic failure. Your people will have to choose between maintaining security on the prisoners and preventing what they believe is a life-threatening emergency." Marcus realized the brilliance of her plan, even as it terrified him. "They'll flood this area with emergency response teams." "Exactly, and in the confusion we'll have our chance." Kira finished her work and stepped back from the control panel. "But we'll need to move fast. Once they realize it's a false alarm, security will be tighter than ever." The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in a red glow that made the corridor look like a scene from hell. The sound of running footsteps echoed from multiple directions as emergency teams responded to the apparent crisis. "Now," Kira whispered. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, Kira's knowledge of the station's layout proving invaluable. She had memorized every detail during her time in captivity, preparing for an escape attempt that she never thought would come. Marcus provided cover, his military training and access codes allowing them to bypass several security checkpoints. The holding area was in chaos when they arrived. Emergency teams in environmental suits were searching for the source of the atmospheric failure while trying to maintain security on the prison cells. In the confusion, Marcus and Kira were able to reach the main control room for the detention center. "Can you access the cell locks from here?" Marcus asked, keeping watch at the door. Kira was already at work, her fingers flying over the control interface. "The system is more complex than the individual cells, but yes, I can override the magnetic locks, but it will take time." "How much time?" 3 minutes, maybe 4. Marcus checked his chronometer. The attack outside was intensifying. He could feel the station's hull groaning under the strain of weapons fire. "Make it 3. Once those locks disengage, we'll have every guard on the station converging on this location." As Kira worked, Marcus found himself reflecting on the decisions that had brought him to this moment. He thought about his training, his oath to protect humanity, and the trust his fellow soldiers had placed in him. By any military definition, what he was doing constituted treason of the highest order. Yet for the first time in months, he felt like he was truly serving the values he had sworn to protect. "There," Kira announced. "The locks are disengaged, but I've programmed a 60-second delay. That should give us time to reach the prisoners and explain the situation before the cells open." They raced through the detention center, moving from cell to cell. The Zephyrian prisoners' reactions ranged from suspicion to desperate hope as Marcus and Kira quickly explained the escape plan. Most were too weak from their treatment to question their good fortune, but a few of the stronger ones immediately began organizing the others. Among them was an older Zephyrian male named Terk, who had been Kira's second-in-command during the peace negotiations. His relief at seeing her alive was palpable, but his expression quickly turned serious when he saw Marcus. "Commander, is it wise to trust this human?" Terk asked in the Zephyrian language. Kira responded in English, ensuring Marcus could understand. "He saved my life and discovered the truth about our situation. Without him, we would all be dead within hours." The cell doors began to open with a soft hiss of decompressing air. Marcus felt his heart rate spike as he realized there was no turning back now. Whatever happened next, he had committed himself to this course of action. "The escape pods are 2 levels down," he announced to the group. "The station's under attack, so most of the security forces will be focused on repelling the boarding parties. If we move quickly and quietly, we should be able to reach them before." An alarm began shrieking, different from the environmental emergency alert. This was the prisoner escape alarm, and Marcus knew it meant their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. "They know," he said grimly. "We've got maybe 2 minutes before this place is swarming with guards." Kira took charge immediately, her natural leadership reasserting itself. "Terk, take the civilians and head for the escape route. I'll stay with Marcus and handle any pursuit." "Commander, I won't leave you again," Terk protested. "That's an order, old friend. These people need to survive to tell the truth about what happened here." Marcus watched the exchange with growing respect for Kira's leadership. Even in the most desperate circumstances, she put the welfare of others before her own safety. It reinforced his conviction that helping her was the right decision, regardless of the consequences. As the freed prisoners began moving toward the escape route, Marcus heard the sound of approaching footsteps and shouted orders. The guards were closing in, and the final confrontation was about to begin. The sound of military boots echoing through the corridors grew louder as Marcus and Kira brought up the rear of the escape column. The freed Zephyrian prisoners moved with surprising speed despite their weakened condition, driven by the desperate hope of survival. Marcus could hear Sergeant Williams's voice over the comm channels, coordinating the search teams with the cold efficiency of a man who had spent years hunting enemies. "Seal all exits to the lower decks," Williams barked through the intercom. "We have a code black prisoner escape in progress. Authorization for lethal force is granted." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Code black meant the escapees were considered armed and extremely dangerous. The guards would shoot on sight, no questions asked. He grabbed Kira's arm as they reached a junction in the corridor. "This way," he whispered, directing her away from the main passage. "There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to the pod bay. It's not on most of the station schematics." Kira nodded and passed the information to Terk in rapid Zephyrian. The group changed direction, following Marcus through a series of narrow service corridors that were barely wide enough for a single person. The confined space made Marcus claustrophobic, but it also provided excellent cover from the search teams. As they crawled through the maintenance shaft, Marcus could hear the guards above them, their voices muffled by the metal paneling. They were close, too close. One wrong move, one creaking piece of metal, and the entire escape would be over. "Contact!" The shout came from somewhere behind them, followed by the distinctive whine of plasma rifle fire. Marcus's blood ran cold as he realized some of the prisoners had been spotted. "Keep moving," Kira urged from behind him. "We can't help them if we're captured too." The maintenance shaft opened into a storage area adjacent to the escape pod bay. Marcus dropped down first, his rifle ready, and quickly scanned the room. Empty. He motioned for the others to follow, watching as one by one, the escaped prisoners dropped silently into the storage area. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the ongoing space battle. The Zephyrian rescue fleet was taking heavy casualties, but they were holding their ground, creating a corridor for any escape pods that might launch. The sight of the fighting filled him with a mixture of admiration and sadness. These people were willing to die for their captured comrades, while his own government was executing innocent civilians. "The pod bay is just through that door," Marcus said, pointing to a heavy blast door marked with yellow warning stripes. "But there's a security checkpoint. I'll need to use my access codes to get us through." Kira studied the door's control panel. "Your codes will trigger an automatic alert to security headquarters. They'll know exactly where we are the moment you use them." Marcus had already considered this problem. "I know, but it's our only option. Once I activate the door, you'll have maybe 90 seconds to get everyone into the pods and launch before the security teams arrive." "What about you?" Kira asked, though Marcus suspected she already knew the answer. "Someone needs to hold them off, buy you time to escape." Kira's violet eyes flashed with anger. "Absolutely not. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for us." "It's not your decision to make," Marcus replied quietly. "I started this rescue knowing what it might cost. Your job is to get these people to safety and tell the truth about what's happening here." Before Kira could argue further, the sound of approaching voices echoed from the corridor outside the storage area. They were out of time. Marcus moved to the control panel and placed his palm on the biometric scanner. The security system chirped as it recognized his identity, and the blast door began to cycle open with a low mechanical whine. Immediately, red alert lights began flashing throughout the pod bay. "Go," Marcus shouted, but Kira was already in motion, directing the prisoners toward the escape pods with the efficiency of a trained military commander. The pod bay contained 12 single-person escape pods, each one equipped with enough life support for 72 hours and a basic navigation system. Marcus helped load the weakest prisoners into the pods, while Kira performed rapid system checks on each vessel. "These pods are designed for emergency evacuation," Marcus explained as he sealed the first pod's hatch. "They'll take you to the nearest habitable system, probably the Kepler station in the neutral zone." Terk grabbed Marcus's arm as he was helped into one of the pods. "Human, I misjudged you. If we survive this, your name will be remembered with honor among our people." Marcus nodded, though he doubted he would live to see any recognition. The sound of cutting tools echoed from the storage area. The security teams had found their location and were burning through the blast door. As the last of the prisoners were secured in their pods, Kira remained on the launch platform, her hands dancing over the pod bay's master control system. "The launch sequence is initiated," she announced. "All pods will fire simultaneously in 30 seconds. Marcus looked at her in confusion. "Why aren't you in a pod?" "Because I'm not leaving without you," Kira said firmly. "There's room for 2 in the command pod if we squeeze." "The pods are designed for 1 person. 2 would exceed the life support capacity." "Then we'll have to make it work." Kira's expression brooked no argument. "I told you before, I won't abandon someone who risked everything to save us." The cutting sounds from the storage area grew louder, and Marcus could see the bright glow of plasma torches beginning to penetrate the blast door. They had perhaps 20 seconds before the security team broke through. 10 seconds to launch," the automated system announced. Marcus made his decision. He grabbed Kira's hand and pulled her toward the last remaining pod, a larger command vessel designed for senior officers. As they squeezed into the cramped space, Marcus could hear the blast door finally giving way behind them. "Launch sequence initiated," the pod's computer announced in a calm, synthetic voice. Through the pod's small viewport, Marcus saw Sergeant Williams and a team of guards burst into the pod bay just as the electromagnetic launchers fired. The escape pods shot out of the station like bullets from a gun, their emergency thrusters carrying them away from the massive structure at maximum velocity. Williams's face appeared in the viewport for a split second, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief, as he realized that his former subordinate had orchestrated the entire escape. Marcus felt a pang of regret, not for saving the prisoners, but for the betrayal Williams must be feeling. They had served together for 2 years, and now Marcus was branded a traitor. The pod's navigation system kicked in, automatically plotting a course for the nearest neutral territory. Through the rear viewport, Marcus could see the other escape pods spreading out in different directions, making it harder for the station's defensive systems to target them all. "We made it," Kira said, her voice filled with wonder. "I can't believe we actually made it." Marcus wasn't celebrating yet. "The hard part is just beginning. Once we reach the neutral zone, you'll be safe, but I'll be a wanted man for the rest of my life." Kira turned to look at him in the cramped confines of the pod. "Is that what you think, that you'll be alone in this?" "I committed treason against my own government. There's no going back from that." "Marcus," Kira said softly, "you didn't commit treason. You upheld the highest ideals of what it means to be a soldier. You protected the innocent and stood up for justice when your own command failed to do so." As their escape pod hurtled through space toward an uncertain future, Marcus began to understand that his life as Lieutenant Marcus Chen of the Terran Alliance was over. But perhaps, just perhaps, his life as something greater was just beginning. Part 4. The escape pod's cramped interior became their entire world for the next 18 hours. Marcus and Kira took turns sleeping while the other monitored their trajectory and the increasingly frantic communications from the tribunal station. The Terran Alliance had declared all escaped prisoners to be armed terrorists, and a substantial bounty had been placed on their capture, dead or alive. "They're calling you the worst traitor in military history," Kira observed, listening to the intercepted transmissions. "According to these reports, you've been secretly working with Zephyrian intelligence for months." Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "Of course they are. It's easier to paint me as a long-term spy than admit their own intelligence failures." He checked their position on the navigation display. 6 more hours to the neutral zone. Think we'll make it?" "The Zephyrian rescue fleet is providing escort," Kira said, monitoring the tactical display. 3 of our ships are shadowing us at maximum sensor range. They'll intercept any pursuit vessels." What she didn't mention was the cost of that protection. Marcus could see it in the casualty reports scrolling across the communications array. The rescue mission had cost the Zephyrian fleet heavily. Ships that had come to save prisoners who shouldn't have been prisoners in the first place were now floating debris in space. As they approached the neutral zone, Marcus began to grasp the full magnitude of what he had done. It wasn't just his own life that had been forever altered. His actions had exposed a systematic war crime that went to the highest levels of the Terran Alliance command structure. The political ramifications would be enormous. "Kira," he said quietly, "when we reach safety, what's going to happen to the information you have about the illegal executions?" "It will be presented to the Galactic Council," she replied. "Along with testimony from all the survivors, your government will have to answer for their crimes." "And me, what happens to me?" Kira was quiet for a long moment. "That depends on what you want to happen. The Zephyrian government will grant you asylum, but you'll never be able to return to human space. Or," she hesitated. "Or what?" "Or you could help us end this war properly. Not through more violence, but through truth. You have access to classified Terran Alliance systems, knowledge of their military protocols, and most importantly, you have credibility as someone who sacrificed everything to do what was right." Marcus understood what she was suggesting. "You want me to become a double agent, work actively against my own species?" "I want you to work for peace," Kira corrected. "There are people on both sides who want this war to end, but they're being drowned out by the extremists who profit from the conflict. You could help us identify the real war criminals on both sides and bring them to justice." The pod's proximity alarms chimed softly, indicating they were approaching the neutral zone boundary. Through the viewport, Marcus could see the distinctive outline of a Zephyrian cruiser moving to intercept them, their escort to safety. Incoming transmission, the pod's communication system announced. A new voice filled the small space, speaking in accented English. Escape Pod 7, this is Captain Thyra of the ZDS Vindication. We are honored to provide you escort to safety. Commander Valdris, it is good to hear your voice again. Captain Thyra, Kira responded, relief evident in her tone. Status report on the other escape pods. 9 of 12 pods reached the neutral zone successfully. The survivors are being processed at Haven Station. Unfortunately, 3 pods were intercepted by Terran patrol ships. Marcus felt his heart sink. 3 pods meant at least 3 lives lost, people who had died because of his decision to free them. The weight of command responsibility, something he had never fully experienced as a junior officer, settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. Captain, Kira continued, I'm transmitting the complete files on the illegal execution program, along with testimony from Lieutenant Marcus Chen, the Terran officer who discovered the truth and orchestrated our escape. Understood, Commander. The information will be forwarded immediately to the High Command and the Galactic Council. Lieutenant Chen, be advised that you are now under the protection of the Zephyrian Defense Corps. Marcus keyed his microphone. Thank you, Captain. I need you to know that not all humans support what was happening on that station. There are good people in the Alliance who would be horrified if they knew the truth. We understand, Lieutenant. That is why your testimony will be so important in the days to come. As their escape pod was brought aboard the Vindication, Marcus got his first close look at the interior of a Zephyrian vessel. The architecture was more organic than human ships, with curved walls and soft lighting that somehow felt more welcoming than the harsh angles and bright illumination of Terran designs. The crew members who escorted them from the docking bay treated Marcus with a mixture of curiosity and respect that surprised him. He had expected hostility, perhaps even imprisonment, but instead found himself being welcomed as an honored guest. Your reputation precedes you, explained Commander Jarak, the ship's first officer, as he led them to the briefing room. Word of your actions has already spread throughout the fleet. Many of our people thought all humans were like the ones who run the detention centers. I'm just one person, Marcus protested. I don't represent all of humanity. Perhaps not, Jarak replied, but you represent the possibility that peace between our peoples is still achievable. The briefing room was filled with senior officers, intelligence analysts, and what appeared to be civilian diplomats. At the head of the table sat Admiral Cathara, a distinguished Zephyrian female whose presence commanded immediate respect. Lieutenant Chen, she began, you have our gratitude for your actions in preserving the lives of our people. However, we find ourselves in a difficult position. Your own government has declared you a traitor and terrorist. They are demanding your immediate extradition for trial. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, and your response? We have denied their request, naturally. You are under our protection. However, this creates a diplomatic crisis that could escalate the conflict rather than resolve it. Kira leaned forward. Admiral, with respect, Lieutenant Chen's actions have provided us with something far more valuable than a single defector. He has given us the evidence we need to expose the Alliance's war crimes to the galaxy. Admiral Cathara nodded slowly. Indeed, but evidence alone may not be sufficient. The Alliance leadership will claim the documents are forgeries, that Lieutenant Chen is a long-term intelligence asset who fabricated the evidence. They will paint this entire incident as a Zephyrian false flag operation. Then what do you propose? Marcus asked. We propose something that has never been attempted in the history of interstellar conflict, the Admiral replied. A joint investigation conducted by representatives from both sides along with neutral observers from the Galactic Council. A complete examination of the evidence, with full transparency and accountability. Marcus realized the brilliance of the proposal. You want to put the entire war on trial. Precisely. Let the galaxy see the truth about what has been done in the name of this conflict. Let both sides be held accountable for their crimes. The Alliance will never agree to that, Marcus said with certainty. Too many powerful people have too much to lose. Perhaps, Admiral Cathara agreed. But they will find it difficult to refuse when the alternative is the immediate release of all evidence to the galactic media, along with testimony from a decorated Terran officer who risked his life to expose the truth. As Marcus sat in the briefing room of an enemy vessel, surrounded by beings his government had taught him to hate, he realized that his journey from soldier to traitor was only the beginning. The real fight for truth and justice was just starting, and the outcome would determine not just his own fate, but the future of two entire civilizations. Part 5. The joint investigation proposal sent shockwaves through both governments. For 3 days, Marcus remained aboard the Vindication while diplomatic channels burned with heated exchanges between the Alliance and the Zephyrian Empire. The neutral systems watched with growing interest as rumors of systematic war crimes began circulating through the galactic media. Marcus spent those days being debriefed by Zephyrian intelligence officers, providing detailed information about Alliance military protocols, command structures, and the specific individuals involved in the illegal execution program. The process was exhausting, but he found the Zephyrian officers to be thorough and professional, treating him with the respect due a fellow military professional rather than as a captured enemy. "Lieutenant," said Intelligence Director Valos during one of their sessions, "we've been analyzing the data you provided about the detention facility. The scale of the operation suggests this wasn't a rogue program. It had to have authorization from the highest levels of your command structure." Marcus nodded grimly. The funding alone would have required approval from the Defense Council. We're talking about billions of credits, multiple facilities, and thousands of personnel. Someone at the cabinet level had to know. Defense Minister Harrison, Valos asked. Almost certainly, and probably Secretary of State Williams and Admiral Morrison. They're the ones who have been pushing for escalation of the conflict. What Marcus didn't mention was the personal cost of this knowledge. Each name he provided was someone he had once respected, officers he had served under with pride. Learning that they were complicit in mass murder had shattered his faith in the institution he had devoted his life to serving. On the 4th day, Admiral Cathara summoned Marcus to her private office. The space was smaller than he had expected, with walls lined with books, actual physical books, something he hadn't seen in years. "The Alliance has agreed to the joint investigation," she announced without preamble. Marcus felt his eyebrows rise in surprise. "They have. I didn't think they'd risk the exposure." "Neither did we. But it appears they've calculated that cooperation will do less damage than stonewalling. They're probably hoping to control the narrative and limit the scope of the investigation." "What are the terms?" "A joint commission consisting of 3 Alliance representatives, 3 Zephyrian representatives, and 3 neutral observers from the Galactic Council. Full access to all relevant facilities and personnel. Complete transparency in the proceedings." Marcus considered this. They'll try to limit access to the most damaging evidence, claim national security exemptions. "Undoubtedly, which is why we need you to serve as our primary witness. Your testimony, combined with the documentary evidence you provided, will be difficult for them to dismiss." The weight of what she was asking settled on Marcus like a physical force. "You want me to testify publicly against my own government?" "I want you to testify for the truth," Admiral Cathara corrected. "The question is whether you're prepared to do so." Marcus thought about the Zephyrian civilians he had seen awaiting execution, the fear in their eyes, the dignity with which they faced death. He thought about the 3 escape pods that hadn't made it to safety, and the lives that might have been saved if he had acted sooner. "I'll do it," he said quietly, "but I want guarantees about the other survivors. They shouldn't have to relive their trauma just to satisfy political requirements." "Agreed. We'll limit their involvement to written statements where possible." The investigation began 2 weeks later at Haven Station, a neutral facility in the DMZ between human and Zephyrian space. Marcus found himself in the surreal position of sitting at a table with representatives from both sides, preparing to expose the darkest secrets of his own government. The Alliance delegation was led by Judge Advocate General Patricia Walsh, a career military lawyer known for her ruthless efficiency. She was accompanied by Colonel David Price from Military Intelligence and Dr. Sarah Chen, a civilian expert in interstellar law. Marcus recognized all 3 from his days at the military academy, which made the situation even more uncomfortable. The Zephyrian delegation included Admiral Cathara, Intelligence Director Valos, and Commander Jarak. The neutral observers were led by Counselor Tenna from the Galactic Council, along with representatives from the Centauri Republic and the Vegan Alliance. This commission is convened to investigate allegations of systematic war crimes committed during the ongoing conflict between the Terran Alliance and the Zephyrian Empire, Counselor Tenna announced formally. "We will examine evidence, hear testimony, and determine the facts of these allegations." Jag Walsh immediately stood. "The Alliance delegation wishes to note for the record that Lieutenant Marcus Chen is a deserter and traitor who has been compromised by enemy intelligence. His testimony should be given no weight whatsoever." "Noted," Counselor Tenna replied. "However, this commission will evaluate all evidence on its merits, regardless of source." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The character assassination had begun before he had even spoken a word, but Admiral Cathara had prepared him for this tactic.